Welcome to a special bonus episode of You Can't Laugh at That, the podcast where we take topics that you can't laugh at and find out ways to laugh at them and the never-ending quest to prove that anything can be funny. Joining us, we've got an all-star panel today. We've got Gheramy coming live somewhere between Native America and the Middle East.
Hey, it's still better than being in the white purgatory you're in.
Yeah, dude, I'm in this white room wearing a white shirt as it's
between Trump and Biden.
White noise.
Coming to us back in space again, Steve Mers. How are the celebrations looking from up there?
I'm not in space, David. I'm in my living room.
Wait.
You live in
David, they can't see either way. Just say I'm on a space.
I can see in the in the promos that I post.
It's a fisheye lens.
All right.
I'm in a roadster.
Steve is in a road. Is that all right? Anyway, John Armstrong is also joining us, our first ever two-time guest, because today's topic is Dave Chappelle's SNL monologue. And I feel like it would be weird with two white guys in a native Arab talking about a bit that had largely black undertones and overtones.
We were included in Biden's speech. That's why I'm here.
I am the liaison to navigate all the nigga bombs through the set. Let's pitch it to John.
Yep.
How do you feel about that one?
Yeah, you have a quota. You have a quota that you have to meet. No, you're the first person I thought of when I was watching that and thinking, because when I was watching the monologue live, I was like, oh, this is really well thought out. It's well structured, as we were talking about before, and you were the first person I thought of, just because I feel like you would have like a really good perspective on it. And also, and your episode is also one of the most listened to. So I'm playing analytics too. It's like a little bit of sports, a little bit of comedy, a little bit of racial diversity.
Slave to the algorithm. We are all slaves to the algorithm.
Right, man. You know, when there's a left-handed pitcher up, you need a right-handed batter.
When we had you on the first time, I was like, the saxophone player?
Is it going to be a tradition that they just bring in somebody like Chappelle? SNL this whole season has brought in a lot of stand-up comedians to be their hosts. Why do you think that is? Just out of curiosity, do you think there's a reason?
Oh, you need that, man. Like the way they have to do the show now and the way it's so chopped up. I mean, you need people who can punch, you know what I mean? And for one, you just need a draw. SNL always has these peaks and valleys, and we were kind of going into a valley anyway, besides COVID. So to come out of COVID and then they're still trying to get the show to go, you're going to need some names on there, and then you're going to need people who have that caliber, that ability, you know what I mean? So I think half of it is the money machine, just we need these bigger comedians, but the other half of it is not just big comedians for the sake of that, but somebody who's saying something. So, because the other thing too now is SNL is chopped up on YouTube. And because that's the way I kind of watch it now, is you watch it in skits. So you need people who are able to translate through that format too, you know what I mean? To where you might not have saw the whole show, but did you see the Aunt Jemima skit? You know what I mean? Did you see you know what I mean? It's chopped up like that. So I think you need those type of comedians to where you're gonna go in past that first skit, past that second skit. You know what I mean? So and this is just the times we're in, man.
And the caliber of comic too. I mean, like you were saying, they all have something to say. I mean, they're not bringing in like Jeff Dunham to open with his puppets at the beginning.
And I think some of it, like I'm gonna probably compare a lot of this to Burr's, just because I'm a really big Bill Burr stan. But at the same time, for one, his was a little overdue. He had never did it before. But for two, I think a lot of flack that people like mainstay institutions are getting is this whole they're trying to be too woke, or everything is so whitewashed now, everything is so PC. So I think them incorporating comics like that is a little bit of pushback on that narrative, so that they don't have to, they're not so they're not falling back into that. So even if people are still complaining about audience reactions and the audience should have got this and they didn't get that, at least the the showrunners or producers can say we're giving you the content, we're giving it to you to digest. It's up to maybe it's not us who's doing this super woke thing, maybe it's the audience who's responding this way. So I think that's partly too just to push back on the let's have some people here who are go push it further down the road and not just be here as not shitting on Tom Hanks, but being like a Tom Hanks who's just the dad of America and just there.
If it's in front of you, if you see the envelope being pushed in front of you, it makes it a little more palatable than if it's in the fringes. Like even if it's on a Netflix special, somebody who doesn't like Bill Burr isn't necessarily going to watch the Bill Burr Netflix special, but if they like SNL, they're going to watch Bill Burr on SNL.
And the good thing about both of those two, but let's keep it in the Dave Chappelle space, is they do have the ability. They both have a lot of liberal fans because they will admit that they skew liberal, but they have a lot of Trump fans. A lot of conservatives don't get into a lot of woke people or whatever you want to call it or liberal shit, but the fearlessness of a Chappelle, and I mean, let's not get it twisted, some of the trans jokes too, like and then even the joke that Chappelle did where he was, are you triggered? I'm not gonna go into it because I know we're gonna get to that.
Yeah.
But I think his being willing to step on that other line, and that's another thing of a genius comedian, is to be able to do that, because you can be right, but still that finger wagging, people don't like that shit. And one of the best things about comedy is to be able to argue the other side. That's when you're really, really good, because you can and you feel that in this monologue or in this set, whatever you want to call it.
Even like politically though, like Dave Chappelle endorsed Andrew Yang big time. And I feel like Andrew Yang, I mean, not to really dive too deep into politics, because that's not what we're here to talk about. But
not in this election. No,
yeah. I can't stop. It's like I broke up with the girl, but then I saw her again the next week, and it's like, well, I mean, it won't hurt if I go home with her one more time.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Not letting that wound heal, just picking at that scab. I've done that a million times.
But Andrew Yang is a very the only reason he ran, I mean, his ideas skewed towards liberal, but the only reason he ran as a liberal, he's an independent, but the only reason he ran as a liberal is because that is the party that he would be able to get elected in. I mean, he wouldn't have gotten anywhere if he ran as a Republican or an independent.
A lot of with right people. It was even controversy because even a lot of alt-right people were endorsing him just because of the universal basic income is very liked by everybody. Now he's in no way, you know what I mean, like a alt-right Nazi type, of course, you know what I mean.
Right.
But at the same time, back to the point of Chappelle, some people are able to speak to that in everybody without seeming to be trying to. But that's the other thing, that pandering shit. I think that's what a lot of people are past. I mean, being black to me is of course the racism is up front with a lot of shit with Trump, but I do think some of the pushback and some of the gravitation towards Trump is people's perception of having to feel a certain way, or even like black people being attracted to Trump. I think a lot of people are in the mind of Democrats want you to feel this victim thing, and I don't want to be in that. That's why a lot of Latinos vote for Trump. You know what I mean? It's not that cut and dry black and white, but it's in that space of like, I'd rather have pushback against this. A good friend of mine is Asian, but he's a right thinking person, and of course I'm the biggest lefty ever. And I was saying it was some racist thing, and I'll never forget this thing he told me, which is very true. He was like, I don't need you to be offended for me. You know what I mean? And I think that's what happens with a lot of this political stuff, a lot of what's going on now, back to the comedy with Dave Chappelle. Like, some people are sometimes be it's a reason to be offended. But there's people who are in those groups who are like, I don't need you to be offended for me. I don't, you know, people are complicated, you know?
Right.
I mean, also too, I think another reason why I think he wore the suit is he knew who he was talking to. Like he knew he was going to make fun of the right more so than he would be making fun of the left, because the left have more to celebrate about. So you kind of have to present yourself in a more professional manner to these people who kind of, I don't know. I guess I didn't really have any real ending to that thought, but I think the reason why he dressed the way he did was because of who he was addressing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
For sure.
you have to. Yeah, it's almost to define the expectation of that group. So even if you're more conservative, you could listen to that set and still enjoy it, I think.
Yeah, like I said, like he has a lot of Trump fans, and he does articulate things in a way that it's just palatable to people, and he always throws in something where he fucks with people. Late, and we'll talk about it later in the thing, to where it is, you can see it as a shot against the left, or just keeping at least keeping the left on their toes. You know what I mean? Because that is another thing that he does. Is he kind of as real good comedians will let you know, is like, this is very me versus you guys. I'm not in any of I'm kind of, you know, I'm the gadfly. I'm the one commenting on all this shit.
Yep.
You know what I mean? I'm not, even though I have these, you know, you can classify me as being a left person, but it's very, and once again, we'll talk about it because he talks about that towards the end of it, to where it's very him versus us.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So he might have these same thoughts, but he's not swimming in the lefty suit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he's able to translate to other people, you know?
Well, I've
Yeah,
said
he's
it 100
transcendent.
times on this podcast that my favorite part about comedy is the ability to play devil's advocate.
Yeah, that's a good. We were just talking about that. The ability to argue the other side.
Right.
If you can argue the other side, then yeah, and it makes you a good debater, and it makes you a good lawyer and things like that. But when it comes down to comedy, it lets you see little corners of jokes, like lets you shine light in corners of jokes that you might not see on your blind side. You know what I mean?
Know thy enemy.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah. That's why you and I both are with white women.
Let's
I'm with the white woman because it's like endless mimosas except blowjobs.
bottomless BJs.
Yeah, dude. I think she said no once.
Laughing.
They were talking about in the beginning of this pandemic, before the crazy people got a hold of the narrative, that's going to be the way around this thing. I mean, because herd immunity or no vaccine or no, you need a rapid test that you can administer to the public. That's going to be the way around this. I was watching something, they were talking about certain things like tuberculosis, how that has been a plague on man for years and years, and different other diseases that even once you got it eradicated, it still pops up and you still have problems. So the ability to be able to test and really track down is what's going to be the way out of this. So to have, you know, comedians do it, you know, out of necessity.
Yeah, did you see
It's kind of
Chappelle's on
like,
Biden's COVID relief team?
you know, they probably use them for the optical. I saw when they were talking about the COVID release team, and they showed a picture and it was a black woman. I was like, oh, that's nice. But I know that's very optics too, because then they showed the rest of the team, it's a bunch of other non-black people, which I don't care either way. But you know what I mean? Some things are just for optics. Like, hey, look, one of them helping us out.
Well, none of them are Mike Pence, so I hope he makes the cut after he gets to stay on the COVID team.
Pence is high, and I ain't seen shit from him.
Oh yeah, no,
They're all keeping quiet for Trump.
Yeah, let Trump make all the noise.
You know what an easy way of making sure that a mass of people don't get COVID? a good guy with COVID.
It ends with me.
I got the punchlines tonight. Don't worry, guys.
Yeah, that's good. Write that down.
I did. Good guy with COVID. That's what I wrote down.
Is that why Trump got it? Because he was.
Yeah.
That's another QAnon fucking conspiracy.
except for him, it was like, you know what stops a bad guy with a gun? A good guy with a gun shooting everyone with the gun that the bad guy was already shooting.
You know?
But I'm doing it to stay president. But
you know who I think might be the breaker in all this shit? It's his wife.
Yeah.
I think so. That because I think all his sycophants will stay in line and they would toe the line. And Democrats are so dickless and everything else that, I mean, yeah, Biden won, but I could see a way for him doing something to somehow stretch this out or something, just because Republicans get to make up new rules all the time with everything and Democrats eventually bow to it. But I think the ultimate thing that's gonna get him out of there is his wife. She supposedly was done with the marriage even before they got elected, and that's why she didn't want to move in for a while and all this other shit and all the all the footage of her not wanting to hold his hand and this, that, and the other. But the defeat that he would suffer if he did dig in, but if she walked away or formally filed a divorce, his narcissism won't deal with that. So if anything, I think she's gonna be one of the things that makes him like, okay, I gotta concede this. Because if he was by himself, then I think he would literally die on that hill.
Yeah, oh, for sure. He'd be like, do you mind if I stay here?
Because he's already going to start doing rallies and stuff, and they're churning up all this, conspiracy votes. It's like, yeah, the dude who didn't get the popular vote the first time, who has never had over 50% approval, it's so astonishing that you lost. And don't get me wrong, like, a lot of people voted for him, more this time than last time. But I was just telling somebody, like, the thing that I don't like that a lot of those like kind of crazy people on the right are doing, as far as like it's a conspiracy and this many people couldn't have voted, it's like when they win elections, I don't believe that it was rigged. I know this country. I know that many people think that way. So to like flip it around and be like, well, this many people couldn't possibly feel that way, it's like, get your head out of your ass.
Yeah.
I love the back and forth. What is, and when you try to tell people that essentially your police, fire, and library are social. No, it's because I like it, so it's not. It's like the guy. It's like the guy who gets the finger up the ass during a blowjob, but it's not gay because it makes me come. It's like, no, but when they do it, it's not right. But I can get a finger up my ass. It's like, dude, stop.
Right. That's just like,
ass doesn't make you gay, but the point of it is like, to try to impose something being evil when others do it. But
stop the count the votes.
Yeah. Like or somebody brought up the fact that you're listening to We Are the Champions. Not only did you lose, you're listening to a gay man who was an immigrant. You know what I mean? There's so many ironies in the things that are not in your will box of people who those group of people, especially the kind who fly the flag. I'm not saying Republican per se, because that's not fair. Every Republican doesn't think like that. But if you're out there with the hat and the flag and you're singing "We Are the Champions," if the fact that you're singing Freddie Mercury isn't missed on you, then you're not going to get across to those.
Just sounded like they were singing it through tears this time.
If capitalism's so great and inclusive, then why do we need socialist programs to constantly bail it out?
Right. What is
not to bail it out? When you go further than that, the amount of government subsidies, the amount of companies that wouldn't even exist because of the money that we pump into them, and then we turn around and pretend like these companies are standing up by themselves. I mean, coronavirus revealed so much shit. Remember that first month, and already a lot of colleges were out of money. Hospitals were running out of money. And it's like, how are you out of money with like the pharmaceutical industry, this, that, and the other? And everything was so hand to mouth. Everything was dependent on that next check. Like even was it a year or two ago when those government workers got laid off in DC, and like within the month people's mortgages were late and stuff like this. And these weren't like shitty jobs. These were high paying, you know, $80,000+ jobs. But like it just it reveals that there's a lot of socialism going on, but it's being pumped to segments of the economy that people don't even realize. Or when you hear tax break, like the average person, I know I didn't know until I was an adult that it doesn't mean that you paid this much taxes and now we're going to the government's giving you money. I had to explain that to this girl when she was getting the earned income credit for a child, you know, and she kept talking about getting my tax returns. Like, bitch, you didn't pay $6,000 over in taxes. You're getting a subsidy. You know what I mean? But they even framed the language so that it's a tax break. Like, no, that's a subsidy from the government that the taxpayers pay.
And they do that with our stimulus checks that we get. They put cute little terms like, oh, this is a handout to you, but not necessarily like that's your tax money.
Yeah, that's your money. Because as a matter of fact, isn't it going to affect people's taxes when you file next year? Like, all this shit. It's a finite thing. Yeah, we could keep printing it, you know what I mean? But all of this shit is coming from somewhere. Not like the money tree or whatever.
Well, and it's the narrative, it's the story that we're told and we continue to tell over and over. Like the idea that like rich elites, like conservatives, have made the poor whites believe that it's poor minorities who are taking their money while they are up there, like, you know, embezzling money and doing insider trading. And that's what's more impactful: the person who took your like minimum wage job, or the person who's actually bleeding money out of your local economy.
People in jail now still for marijuana, and even the legal marijuana companies now. It's already coming out how a lot of these places are monopolistic, and so capitalism is already in that, even while people are still being punished because it's still illegal on a federal level. I'm sure we've all seen the memes, you know, congratulations, drugs, for winning the war on drugs.
Yeah.
It's like, and I think that too is very important in this election. The fact that Florida that went for Trump still voted for that $15 minimum wage hike. Or that all these places are decriminalizing drugs. Because a black person, what we see is like, oh, this country isn't as conservative as it pretends to be. It's just a few things it really hates, and we're one. You know what I mean? Yeah. So they're not even able to hide behind this cultural issues or this tax thing or all this other stuff. It's like, no, most Americans want universal health care at this point. Most Americans think that it's long overdue for minimum wage. Most Americans are like, this drug war is fucking stupid. But there are a few things that we're just like,
And Chappelle says all of that, all of what we just talked about in those couple of lines, pretty much. I mean, it's there. It's buried in there, but it's there.
It's so crazy to me that, like, I'm not going to name any names, but there
do it.
A pro-Trump conservative family member of mine who posted the YouTube video on his Facebook page, and above it said, "Well done, good sir." And I'm like, what the fuck? Like,
wait, what did he post?
He said he posted the Dave Chappelle's SNL monologue, like the video, and above the video he posted, "Well done, good sir." And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, he was making fun of you.
Like I said, Chappelle appeals to a lot of Trump voters. There's things that Chappelle puts in there, because I noticed that when I talk to people who are conservative, and they'll always bring up those points about his comedy specials, and it's this whole thing. I've heard a comic, Bird talks about that when he talks about people being offended by a joke. He's like, people will let all this stuff pass until it gets into their wheelhouse, and then they get offended. And that's something that conservatives do regarding Chappelle. But in the opposite, they think he's killing because he will shit on things that liberals do. You know what I mean? But they won't internalize his pushback against the racism and again, you know what I mean? Because once again, that isn't me. These heroin addicted whites aren't me. These poor people aren't me. And of course I'm not racist, so I can laugh at this. I mean, hell, Dave Chappelle is my favorite comedian. How can I be racist? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's another way of still having your conservative identity while being able to not be racist because I like this guy, while being able to strongly laugh at the handful of women this or you know what I mean? And honestly too, like I think it's like rap music's appeal. A lot of people like that. A lot of people like hearing nigga and fucking and fuck and this just the freeness of it all. You know, that there's a certain like giggle in it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's like a woman showing her titties. You might not be able to touch them, but I like her doing that, and that's how it is hearing a black man say nigga and saying fuck these woke people. You know.
So is Chappelle the answer? Is he the 2024 Republican nominee?
And in a lot of people's eyes, they could probably make that argument.
Yeah.
And it's so funny how people always get reintroduced to facts like, oh my God, his wife's Asian, or oh my God, he's actually a Muslim, or you know what I mean? When you bring this up to people like that, but people compartmentalize and take what they want from this person. That Joe Rogan's probably the biggest example of that, because Joe Rogan himself says he tends to lean left, but since he hunts and gets into a lot of things, he's pretty much like almost became like an alt-right kind of mascot, you know. I don't want to say mascot, but you know what I mean.
Oh, you're right though.
Yeah, you're far right though. We'll talk about Rogan.
Chappelle, people like him are gonna be the ones who, if we get through this thing, to help us get through it, because we do need somebody that can talk to everyone. We need somebody who can be relatable and who can resonate with everybody. And the fact that this is a black man who's doing, if we can somehow just, you know, take some threads it's not fair that you got to walk on eggshells and like, you know, wait for these people to realize, you know, government hands off my Medicare, or listening to Freddie Mercury sing, or any other one of these contradictory things that's going on. He's one of the few people who can slowly bring them to the conversation, or even let them know that there's a conversation worth hearing, you know?
The irony is completely lost on these people. Like the fact that they can, you know, sing We Are the Champions, or I don't want to live in this country because now that Biden's elected, I can't live in a country that has socialized medicine, so I'm going to go live in, in a place that has socialized medicine.
Any other country, you pick, you're going to be getting socialized medicine.
The Rage Against the Machine.
Right, exactly.
Oh God, that
Testify.
Yeah.
And that's the challenge that we have now. Now that this like heat magnet is no longer in a position of power, now it's like we have to connect with people. And I think I commented this on one of your statuses, Steve, but it's you don't perform for the audience you wish you had. You have to connect with the audience that you do have. Yeah. Even like, you know, if you're on stage and you're getting paid to do 20 minutes, you better find a way to make those people in that room laugh.
Wasn't about comedy, David.
It wasn't, but that's
just
it's metaphorical.
No,
everything.
Exactly.
And this is where I have a problem connecting with people, is anytime anyone has a problem, I'm like, well, if you're on stage and like there's stupid comedy metaphor. Did you know that you can actually learn more if you're wrong? Like, and you admit it. It's like, oh yeah, new perspective. And then, you know, then you're able to solve the problem faster.
We learn more when we bomb. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
All you want, but it's the bombing is where the lessons are.
Yep.
Yeah. Anytime like somebody who gets on stage very early in their like open mic experience, I don't call it a career until they actually start making money doing comedy, but when they ask if I ask for advice, I say, love it when you bomb. Like, embrace the bomb. Lean into the bomb. Because, number one, no one's going to remember you, all right? Because everybody does it. Number two, everybody does it, so you create a shared experience with everybody else in the room at an open mic. And number three, if you do it bad enough, you've got material for a future joke or story. So, and it builds your character, you know?
Pride always cometh before the fall, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just to be able to sit in that discomfort, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Ugh.
Donald Trump never learned that lesson. He goes up and he's like, I'm going to kill every time. The
Yeah, he's the guy who
audience.
runs the light and who's not getting any laughs, but is
He's
basically
Joe
a
Whalen.
lot of people I've seen. Well, okay, I'm not gonna call that particular club out, but we all know.
He's
Oh,
run the light
yeah.
for 4 years. He's like, no, I'm going to get it. I'm going to get the laugh. That's why he's fighting it. They're literally trying to get him off the stage. And then the part where the part where he talks about
Right here.
what?
I'm sitting here. We're comedians. We've heard so many shitty attempts at good jokes that we're so
if anything, you're
desensitized at this point. Like we can't. Our skin's so thick, so that. But I think by the time, like, Trump is out of office in the next 2 months, everybody in America is going to be a comedian because they've heard it all at this point.
Yeah.
This has been the 4 years of an open mic. We've been watching this guy riff on bits that don't land.
Yeah, I was about to say, if anything, us as comedians, we're
funny.
more offended by the hackiness of the joke that comes
Yeah.
through. It's like you got better than that in your arsenal.
Come on.
Like
It's
step it up. I know you got
annoying. It's so annoying. Like when I see a new comic during this pandemic, it's like, what the fuck are you doing? Just wait till this is over or something. Oh, I gotta say something. Yeah, we've all heard it.
Yeah.
You're not gonna realize it for a couple years.
Yeah. Oh, I've been there.
Sound like
I've been
fucking-
there. I still might be there. You know, I still do it.
I still do it.
We've all been that guy. You can't say you've never been that person before. Come on.
No,
I
I
hate
haven't.
myself
I've
for-
always been a
Yeah.
headliner. Like I have 20 hours of material sparsed out over 4 years.
Oh, trust me, there's nothing anybody can do to me that I haven't already done to myself.
Yeah, exactly. Nothing you can do as an audience will hurt me.
I am my biggest critic. Trust me, I don't.
Yeah.
need-
Yeah, but yeah, it's out of sight, out of mind for me. I'm my biggest critic, but when I hear shit, it echoes in my head. Like
I'm on
yeah.
stage.
Like ultraviolet light.
You can never hate me more than
it kills the Rona.
Yeah, you're right, Jeremy. It's truthful. We've run ourselves through the ringer so many times. I don't know. Maybe that would be a good career for him after he leaves the presidency. Just start showing up to open mics, and just and become a comedian.
That process of it, he wouldn't get though because he would have to fail.
Yeah, he can't do that.
So
Yeah.
he would be that type of comedian who
Brings a gun.
doesn't do a lot of open mics, but just gets. What'd you say?
Said he brings a gun to an open mic.
I'm killing one way or another.
Yeah.
You're the ones that are wrong.
God, I hope he never becomes a comedian. Want to know why? This motherfucker would crush. He would
Oh.
crush. If
His
he-
audience.
I don't think he would. I would think it would be like when Charlie Sheen did his tour. Do you remember that? The Tiger Blood tour or something? I
My
think it
God.
would be like that.
Are you kidding me? That was so funny.
But after a while,
Ironically,
the Charlie Sheen thing, it kind of died down because after a while, it's just this guy on stage, and yeah, it's like internet comics that we've seen at comedy clubs. Like, yeah, when your audience is there, they'll get some stuff, but even they get crowd fatigue after a while, and it's gonna turn into a rally. It's not gonna be a comedy show.
All
It's
right.
gonna be a rally. You're gonna
Yeah.
have clapping. They're gonna be interested, but you're not gonna be. Yeah, you're just gonna be that internet comic talking about that joke you did on YouTube 2 months ago that only the people in the audience can like. Woo!
yeah.
You guys,
That's when I want to bring a gun to a show. Everyone, including the act, need to die.
you guys think for 1 second that Trump is done with the rallies? You guys are. Sadly
Oh no, he's
You're right.
But how's he gonna pay for them? He still hasn't paid for
He won't.
so many of them. He couldn't even pay for the buses to take him home.
Oh my God, he's so cheap.
Motherfuckers. People pay to go see this dumbass.
He gives.
That's what some of this lack of conceding is, besides him not being able to say sorry, is he's still able to raise money now. And they said some of the fundraising for the legal defense for the counting the real votes is going towards just him not really having any money. He's trying
Campaign
to build
debts.
some money in his shit because he's in debt. I mean, New York, soon as he's out of office, I mean, he's fucked. Even if he can get off these charges just from being rich and old, just the cost of the litigation alone. And then especially, like I said, if Melania really leaves, like it's kind of yeah, it's just like, you know, Al Capone and all the other shit. It's all these big things around you that should bring you down, but it's the little simple shit. You know what I mean? It's coming. It'll come down to money. You know what I mean?
Yep, 10,000 little cuts.
Too soon.
How boring would it be to just get the same laugh at every single joke every single time? I would jump off a bridge. I would hate that.
That legendary thing of how he said one of the reasons he quit the Chappelle show was when he was doing that racial pixie sketch, and somebody was laughing at a particular racial joke really hard, and he was just like, it didn't sit well with him, and he just felt like, am I getting beyond the being laughed with and kind of getting laughed at and becoming a caricature of myself? You know what I mean? So like I say, he's very self-aware. I can tell he's like, I'm not just about to, you know, be high-fiving and woo, we did it and blah, blah, blah. It's like, I kind of got to touch different people in the audience too. And once again, that's why a Trump person can watch this and be like, that is the shit. Because there are too many comedians that won't do it. And that won't do it not because they're woke, or because that's the other thing. And that is something true that Trump people point out. A lot of these other people who are on the left, a lot of them are kind of grifting, but grifting for the left. It's like you don't necessarily believe this shit. You just know the points to hit. And after a while, it gets annoying when you can recognize that person. It's like as a guy, you know, spotting the guy at the bonfire, pull out the acoustic guitar and start, you know, it's like, dude, okay, I get it, but like it's like you're being overly, you know, white horsing it now. So 20% of black men voted for Trump this time. I kept telling people he has a very patriarchal draw to him. Might is right, and that's where, you know, the fascist shit starts. But people don't even, the way people don't know what socialism is, people don't know what fascism is. They thought people in this country think the Nazis were socialists. I mean, that's all you need to hear.
Yeah.
People think the fascists were the socialists. That's why it's hard to even have conversations surrounding this, you know. But it's just, you know, we've been throwing around the word brilliant, but yeah, it's just brilliant, his ability to, because even when you're right, once again, us as liberals, for us to take ourselves out of the circle and put them in the circle and say, you all need to fix this fucked upness, it's not that simple. You know what I mean? And they feel that when we do that. You know what I mean? After the Civil War, like the shit that South Africa did with their reconciliation, the shit that Germany did after World War II, we never had that after the Civil War. We never really, and so since we've been placating the South and certain people who think a certain way, who didn't want to be nudged, since we've been placating them for all this time, it's been allowed to fester till we get to this point to where when you bring it up, they're just so hyper sensitive about it that you're the asshole. Like you'll hear this in like conservative circles. The worst thing you can do is call somebody racist. Like, well, no, I mean, probably being at the other end of some racism is worse than that. And I wouldn't even say that's the worst. I mean, you know, it's all subjective. I mean, there's always a bigger pineapple to get shoved up your ass on planet Earth. You know what I mean? There's always
there's always a bigger pineapple.
Yeah,
that's funny.
A little Nicky reference. Hitler's got to get a pineapple shoved up.
Oh yeah, that's right.
You know, everything that white people are experiencing today that Dave Chappelle addressed, you know what I would call that? Manifest destiny.
Hey, you
sow as a society. You did this to yourselves. You put yourself in this place. I don't feel bad. And as a person who is Native American, as a person who's Arab, I don't feel like that's one thing that makes Dave Chappelle a better person than I, that he's willing to reach a lending hand to teach these people how to deal with their grief or the things that they're going through in their society, where I don't feel like that's our responsibility as a non-white person. I know I look white, but we look past that for a little while.
I don't see color.
I'm half Native American, I'm half Arab, but I don't think it's the responsibilities on me to lend that hand to the people who are white. Why should I? What have they done for me throughout history other than kill and demonize who I am as a person or where I've come from ethnically?
So I want to make a quick point. I was talking about this as far as like problems that plague the Black community, and one of the things that I've realized that we need to do, which overall we as humans have to learn how to do, is kind of when you deal with like sexual abuse and trauma, especially in families, and then you grow up, you're not getting an apology. There's not going to be it sucks that you not only did you get hurt and it still affects your life, but you are the one who has to rectify it. And that's what's going on with a lot of these issues in America now. A lot of this shit where we're all the children of this shit that's been going on for the past few hundred years in this country. And now and just like how some white people say, well, I never owned a slave, but you still benefit from that system. And you were never a slave, but I'm still feeling the effects of that system. So to the abuse analogy, it's like it's true that you didn't have a hand in this, but it's also true that you have to be the one to fix it. And it's also true that it's not fair. But it's also true that not doing anything is not going to help, and completely shifting the blame to your uncle who's either dead or nobody believes or who got 1 year for raping you. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it sucks that the responsibility to fix it is completely on a lot of the people who didn't cause it, whether it be the white people who feel that way, that they don't oppress people, or the marginalized communities who are stuck in this position of still dealing with this harassment and redlining and all this other shit that is so ubiquitous, but nobody has a direct hand on. So there's nobody to completely say, that's the guy who didn't give me the job, and that's the guy who kept me out of this neighborhood. You know what I mean? It's so all of these battles become internal battles, and it just feels like it's not fair, and it's not, but it has to be done. You know?
There's not just the guilt thing that white people have to deal with, but it's just the fact that they feel like they've just been put in debt instead of having to feel ahead. They're like, wait, what? I owe something to someone? And it's like, well, you do. You got it. It was forwarded to you by your ancestors. You got to foot the bill now.
Yeah.
But you already were given all this great circumstances, so it's only fair.
The way I try to empathize with that is how it is for us to be Americans. Like we haven't personally bombed a lot of these other countries, but we benefit from a lot of these policies. So we don't have to necessarily kiss every like South American's ass or Arab or African or whoever, but at the same time, you can't be so indifferent that you don't realize that there's a reason that your jeans from Target cost $20. You know what I mean? There's a reason gas is $1.97, or even when it was $4. The fact that you had to kill people, pump it, refine it, and get it over here, that's still relatively cheap. You know what I mean? So especially when you're just depressing the price of that to keep other industries from sprawling up, but that's another conversation. But to the point of, you can be a part of a system that is benefiting from things to where you don't feel like you perpetuating that system, but you're benefiting from it. So you can't you can't continually sit on the sidelines like, well, I didn't do it. It's like that may be true, but this situation exists and you're in it whether you acknowledge it or not.
I think so often on the left, we point out things like, oh, look at these white people who are protesting outside of, City Hall, or, in front of where they're counting the ballots, and none of them got tear gassed or shot at, or, there was no riots that started or whatever. There was no pushback from police. And the thing that's kind of crazy about that is we almost sound like we're saying we wish that happened to them.
Well, yeah, I've said that. I mean, it's not fair, but I kind of wish it would happen in the same sense. I've made this joke before, like with everybody who has kids, like your kids will be making noise and you keep telling them to stop and then they don't want to stop. You keep telling them to stop and they don't want to stop. And it's not until they fall and they like, boop, and they start crying that they stop. A lot of times until you feel that pain of it, you can keep saying it all day, but that's the only. I wish when them people in Michigan went to storm the thing that they got tear gas and they beat the shit out of them. You know what I mean? I wish that shit happened. I would it would be easier to stomach all this shit with Trump if there was actually justice going on. If after like killing George Floyd's killing dude got convicted and went to jail. You know, I know it's still ongoing, but we know it's probably gonna happen, you know. With Breonna Taylor, the fact that you had to dig this up and all this shit, and then the protests that happened and there being protests, and then people are already telling you how to protest, and then you got people coming in either agitating shit or whatever, making inflaming it, but then the police just using that as an excuse to just fuck people up. And there's been no accountability for any of that. And the fact that we just passed all that and glossed over that, when I have seen more police brutality not just this year, but in the last 4 months than I've seen in my entire fucking 41 years. Like, it's like to the point. I mean, like they started doing it to white people in Portland, but these were still leftists. These weren't the gun people. So like those Clive and Bundy assholes. Remember a few years ago when they showed up for that standoff because his cattle were illegally grazing on government land, but then they felt like their freedoms were. If they felt that retribution from the government, the universe would be a little more in line, and actually it would have helped Trump. He would have got even more black support, because the thing about it is black people are very conservative. Republicans fuck up with that, doing all this shit, because black people we're religious. You know, a lot of us are very anti-abortion. A lot of us are very anti-gay. A lot of us can give a shit less about the environment. A lot of us love money. That's why rappers are so attracted to Trump. It's all that shit. The only thing that gets us away from the Republican Party is the overt racism. But black people would sign up for that shit in a heartbeat. You know what I mean? Because unfortunately, we're so hypnotized by the Bible and Jesus that all that stuff like lines up with it. So yeah, I'm going off.
Yeah, I mean,
I agree totally, though.
yeah, oh yeah, definitely. I mean, what the equality looks like, I guess, is what we differ on. Like, adversely, I would like to see it where those things don't also happen to black people in the same.
Yeah. That's what I meant to get to. Yeah, overall, I wouldn't want to see somebody in pain, but it would be nice to see that it wasn't just directed at a certain group.
So often too, you hear the term violence, and I think as a society we need to understand that when somebody's breaking a window or looting a building, that's not violence. What's violence is when the cops are beating people. That's violence. And I think too often on the right, you hear too many people use all this violence was happening until the cops got involved. No, that's when the violence started, is when the fucking cops got involved.
Yeah, that's the cognitive dissonance. They can't acknowledge that we are living in a police state. You know what I mean? Because it would definitely contradict these very people's belief of the "don't tread on me" type shit. They're the main ones who talk that shit. And I don't want to live in a police state, and don't tread on me, and we should have the rights to do all this stuff. Yeah, what all that rioting shit, all that was just like that was just an excuse for people to be able to use their knee-jerk reaction. Oh, here they go again, burning down cities, and they're just doing this. I brought up recently, the worst riot was in Portland. You know what I mean? That was the worst one. They weren't. These things didn't get as bad in other cities as they did there. You know, which I honestly think they did Portland on purpose as a dry run. So when they did try to bring it to Chicago and other places, like, oh no, we've already done this. This isn't a racial thing. This is a law and order thing. And that's something that sadly got missed. And when everybody goes to the taxes and the this and the that, and oh, I'm not into the racism. It's like they were using unmarked vans with people who weren't labeled and just scooping up Americans, literally white people's worst nightmare. And just like the police brutality, it just went away. And
yeah, that's that stuff getting swept under the rug.
You smoke when you pray.
Yeah. All right, guys. Anything else you want to throw in, Steve?
The towel.
Yeah, me too. We covered too much. But all it takes is if there's any sort of controversy, if it's news, if it's overdone, if it's just have Dave Chappelle find a way to laugh at that.
Yeah, pretty much.
Because you can't laugh at that.
Because you can't laugh at that. All right.
You can't laugh at that.
Special thanks to Golden Ox Studio. You can find Golden Ox Studio for all your podcasting needs at goldenoxstudio.com. Hit up Gheramy. He is fantastic to work with, professional. He makes podcasting easy. And if you've been kicking the tires on starting your own podcast, definitely give Golden Ox Studio a look.
If you'd like to weigh in on today's topic, follow us on Twitter at YouCan'tLaughPod, or like us on Facebook at You Can't Laugh at That, and tell us how you did laugh at today's topic or how you didn't. This is all about the conversation, is what I'm saying. All right. Bye.